And welcome into Getting Help from Uncle Sam. You know, elections are very important in our life, from the presidential election down to local elections. And a lot of times people make their decision just based on, oh, I like the way his ad looked. That's 30 seconds, they can tell you anything. It's kind of like buying a box of cereal because you like the way the box looked. Turn the cereal on its side and look at the ingredients in the cereal, and you know whether you're making the right decision or not. To help us today, give us some information about trying to choose candidates, we brought in Baron Coleman. And Baron, you are one of three, the three amigos. Are you guys really amigos?
Yeah, we're friends.
Okay,
we are.
Good.
and in fact, the show came out of us sitting around a conference room discussing politics.
Right.
And we thought, wouldn't it be great if we could open up a phone line and just have other people weigh in as we're talking?
Mm-hmm.
And that's how we ended up with a radio
our
show.
viewers need to know, it's called News and Views.
News and Views from 9 to noon.
And it's news about things that are happening that maybe sometimes people don't know it's actually happening around them.
Yeah, we do a lot of local stuff, a lot of City of Montgomery, River Region stuff. We do a lot of state politics, things that most talk radio shows ignore. Not on purpose, but they like to talk about the big issues on the national stage. We focus on the local stuff.
And then you give your views, obviously.
We have strong views.
You have strong views, and then, of course, the call-in people call, and they can
they
voice
have stronger
their opinions.
views.
They have stronger views. They can say, well, I can turn off the radio,
Absolutely.
too. They can do that. We want to talk today about, and obviously we have a mayoral election happening. The way I like to look at it is people running for office, they're applying for a job. And there should be some, first of all, qualifications for that job. I think that's where we're totally inept as a country, is we don't say, okay, in order to be a representative or a senator or the president or whatever, the governor, you need to be able to do these things. It's kind of like if you go to get your brain operated on, you want to make sure you got a brain surgeon that knows what he's doing. How should we be looking at things from a political standpoint?
Well, you mentioned the box of cereal. I think it's a good analogy because there's a lot of flash and sizzle in politics. You'll get a lot of mail, you'll see TV commercials, radio commercials, and you'll hear that name over and over. And even if you've heard it in sort of a negative context, it's the name that sort of sticks in the back of your mind, and you walk into a voting booth, and I'd say more than half of the people are just looking for names they recognize when they go down the list. So what I would do is, if I was watching a commercial and I saw something and it looked particularly good, I might jump on the website of that candidate, look at some other issues, maybe do a Google search and figure out where this name has surfaced before. Just sort of get some idea. That's sort of the first step of familiarizing yourself with the candidates, and then look at every candidate in the election. They're not all going to be able to afford to run all the TV commercials, run all the mail, but there may be some good candidates, diamonds in the rough down in the lower tier that could win if they could get support from the folks back home.
Do you think some things should be done almost from a public service standpoint that says, okay, obviously the guy with the most money has the best chance? I mean, that's the reality.
90% of the time.
Yeah, 90% of the time. But there may be another person out there that said, look, I can do this, I just don't have the money, I don't have the support, and maybe I don't have some big corporations that are not behind me. There needs to be some kind of a forum that kind of lets people know, okay, this is the qualifications for these people.
Well, I'll give you an example from Alabama. There was a Senate race down in Mobile. The two candidates were Jim Barton, who was an incumbent representative, and Bill Hightower, who was just a business guy.
Okay.
Bill Hightower had some good ideas. He took his message directly to the people, went to meetings set up at churches, neighborhood groups. He got outspent about 8-1, and he won the race 60-40. So you can overcome the money issue, and you can look past the money issue. You can look past all the television commercials, but you've got to be proactive and go out and find out where are these people meeting, what are their ideas, and if you like them, don't be afraid to pick up the phone and call your neighbors. That's something that can overcome money.
Absolutely.
Is you actually taking on that burden and picking up the phone and calling 10 of your friends and say, I really like this guy.
And people are afraid to do that sometimes.
They're very afraid to do that.
They don't need to. But if you're going to call them and say, I like this guy, follow it up with, here's why.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And we do some political consulting. If every one of my candidates and every one of their supporters picked up the phone and called 10 people,
you'd be in.
Never lose. You'd never lose.
That's right.
You'd never lose.
That's right. Well, elections are coming up. Is it okay to call the candidate, especially in the smaller themselves, and talk to them?
City council, absolutely.
Yes.
Even mayoral race, if you can catch them on the phone, absolutely. By the time you get to the congressional race, you've got to understand
it's tough.
They represent 750,000 people.
Right. So it is a little bit harder.
It is tough.
Yeah. Are there some sources people can go to learn more about the candidates normally besides their websites?
There are. You can look in, newspapers. A lot of times will have little write-ups on them,
Right.
things like that. Some, depending on the race, for Congress, for example, there'll be, Heritage will have, Heritage Action Group will have a write-up of the candidates that sometimes they endorse. The National Rifle Association, if you're a gun rights enthusiast. Usually if you're a one-issue voter or there's an issue that's particularly important to you, pro-life, pro-guns, pro-family issues, there's usually somebody out there that rates candidates according to that issue. There are very few places that go out there and just say, we're going to give you an objective overview of all the candidates. There's just no interest in starting something like that.
Well, good. Well, we're going to hope that our viewers are going to use what you've given us as a jumping off point, especially, and they can test it right now with the mayoral election.
Absolutely, and
It's
the
right
city
around
council
the corner.
races.
And city council, it's right around the corner. Thank you so much for being with
Thanks,
us.
Jay.
And we're going to get you back some other times because, obviously when issues come up, we want to be able to look at them square in the face.
I appreciate it.
Okay, and just remember this, the elections are right around the corner. Do your homework. Don't just vote for a pretty face. And we'll be right back right after this.